Stay tuned to the Standard of Truth podcast.
So again, I'm reading this piece from the Griot, which, featured you amongst several other people, and it opens up talking about the black vote in the midterms, GOP receiving up to 14%, which is up from 8%, and that's almost like an 80% increase. That's a fairly substantive increase, and it also said in Georgia, Republican Governor Brian Kemp more than doubled his support among black voters to 12% in 2022 compared with 5% just 4 years prior. So again, that's more than a 100% increase. I would love to hear from your perspective. And before I ask you that, the article also cites that you left the Democratic Party in 2012. Is that accurate?
That is. It's pretty much accurate, because I believe my twins were born then, and right going into the 2016 election cycle was the first time I actually decidedly cast my vote for members of the GOP and did not vote for any Democrat.
Okay, all right. So I'm glad you gave us that foundation. I also like to take a moment to introduce you to my co-host, Ivy, because I don't think you got a chance to hear that in the introduction. You can say hi.
Yeah, I was like, no. Hi, April. I'm also a Spelman grad, so it's a pleasure to be on the line with you today.
Awesome. How are you?
I'm well.
All right. So let me just be honest with you, April. I am the same way that you are a self-proclaimed conservative, I am a self-proclaimed liberal. However, you are not in the line of fire today. That's not the purpose of this conversation. I want to better understand, because I am frustrated I get frustrated with Democrats the same way that I get frustrated with Republicans. And the biggest thing I get frustrated by is lack of choice. Because, in my mind, in my opinion, the Republican Party needs to be viable, and it needs to be a viable alternative for African Americans. Democratic support hovers, between 90 and 95% from black voters. Some of that is an affirmative vote, but some of that is many people just don't feel like there's any place for them in the modern GOP. And so I would love to hear from your perspective, what made you leave the Democratic Party? What was the straw that broke the camel's back? And generally speaking, why you feel the Republican Party better suits your values.
All right, awesome. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you setting the foundation and saying that I'm not in the line of fire. I think it's important for us to be able to have healthy dialogue, even with those that we disagree.
Sure.
And I think that there are a lot of places, just in your dissertation, just introducing me, and what you just said, I find so much of what you said I can agree with, meaning I give strong criticism for the GOP, just like I do the Democratic Party. Why? I've always been more of an individualistic kind of person, meaning I have my own mind. I've never had a problem standing alone. If there's something that I believe in and everybody else is going to, the left, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to go this way. And that is proven to just be something that works well for me. So
contrarian by nature.
Right. That is just my personality. Okay. I get it from my father. Yeah. My husband will tell you that is just how she is. So when it came down to my politics, in the article that you read on the Griot, they actually got that from the Associated Press. Okay. And the question that they asked me was, what was the main reason why I left? And it was difficult for me to answer that question, but they didn't include this in the article, but I told them there were actually 3 things that happened to me that caused me to leave. The first thing was I became a mom. When you're young and you're single and it's just you don't tend to think about the world in a political sense. You're just like, I'm just out here doing stuff. I just want to know, do I have enough money in my bank account to catch these bills, right?
Right.
But when I became a mom, my awareness to just the world and how the direction it was going just became heightened. The second thing that happened to me is I became a Christian. Now, like most of us, most Black people, you might grow up in a religious or a Christian context, but something supernaturally happened to me where I became a different person. So my worldview changed, and I began to look at all of life from the context of, what do the scriptures teach? How am I supposed to live and govern my life now that I'm this new creation in Christ? And I found that while I was doing that, I was unable to reconcile so much of the Democratic Party platform with my Christian worldview. The third reason why I left was because I became an entrepreneur. So you have these three major life things that happen, these three major life events that happened to me that caused me to rethink my politics. As an entrepreneur, I am now looking at my wallet differently. It's no longer, these taxes are coming out, I don't know where they're going. I'm accountable for every single dollar that flows in through this company, and I have to give an account for it. So now I have this heightened sense of awareness of, where is my money going? What is it supporting? Because I'm actually paying taxes in a different sense than I was when I was a W-2 employee. I'm looking at regulations differently. I'm looking at all of these things that the average American may or may not consider important. These things became important to me when those three life events happened. And so it was just difficult for me to get behind many of the ideologies that the Democrats were pushing, because I could not be a consistent Christian and hold to some of these same things. And it was difficult for me to compartmentalize and say, this is what I believe politically, but on Sunday I'm doing this. It just did not compute for me.
What we're going to do, and that was very well articulated. Thank you for laying that out. Joining us on the live line is Miss April Chapman, and she is a conservative wife, mom, podcast host. She is helping us better understand why there has been increased support amongst Black people within the GOP. And that's something we really haven't even delved into yet. We've laid the foundation for why you made an individual decision that you made. What are you seeing in Georgia? Because, again, this article cites that Brian Kemp more than doubled his support. What policy initiatives, and I'm hoping it's linked to policy initiatives, that you think that increase in support can be linked to?
I would say it's probably a combination of things. For one, people forget that geographically or demographically, the landscape of Georgia, we do have a heavy Black American population, probably more of the higher Black populations in southern states as opposed to other states.
And they're not all in urban areas, right? There's a lot of Black folks in rural areas.
Right. And these people historically might be, may have voted Democrat, but they have values and ideals that currently simply do not align with the direction that the Democratic Party is going. But more importantly than that, we have this huge population of Black Americans, but we have a huge, thriving, and profitable segment of Black entrepreneurs, right? These are movers and shakers. Yes, Atlanta is considered like the Black Mecca, but we are a population of small business owners. And one thing that I would say, you could talk to, the most liberal of liberal, Black business owners, they cannot deny that Governor Kemp did not do a good job managing our state during the pandemic and creating an environment that we could still thrive and keep our businesses open. And so that we would, that our future earnings would not, would be impacted, but not as much as other states. There's some Black business owners that probably they've lost the will to fight, because depending on where they live, the policies that were being pushed during the pandemic prevented them from being able to make a living. Governor Kemp, I have my issues with him, but he kept our state open. And he made it so where we could safely operate because our lives literally depended on it. And many of us remembered that when it came down to the election. We remember what happened when all of that money during the All-Star game was ripped right from under us because the opposition at the time, Stacey Abrams, you know, she found it necessary to, you know, to promote more division and make everything about, you know, identity. When we're just like, listen, we just want to make some money. Like, what are you talking about? And it just completely went over a lot of our heads. And now, speaking as a conservative, you know, I'm all for smaller government. And I think people are finally waking up and recognizing that the party that claimed to have all of this love for the Black community are implementing policies that are actually hurting us, and we have the results to show for it. Like, we've been on the recipient end of crime, of policies that are soft on crime, and we're tired of having our livelihoods being snuffed out of us because you've got, you know, and I don't want to be offensive, but if we're going to have this conversation, we have to deal in truth. When you have a legal system that doesn't want to hold people accountable and you are light on crime, that affects people that are like, I worked all my life for this, and now it's just gone because you don't want to hold them accountable for breaking the law. People remember things like that. They remember that when you say defund the police, that hurts communities that look like us more than anywhere else. The messaging just missed it. And okay. Governor Kemp, he really did accomplish what he said. Like, I don't need to be your best friend. I don't need the politician, the governor, to be my best friend. I just need you to do what I hired you to do, which is make good on your campaign promise. One thing he promised was to implement constitutional carry in this state, and he accomplished that. He kept our businesses open. If
we can jump in, because you've given us a lot to chew on.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, April. So I'm going to unpack some of it.
Sorry. Nothing to apologize for. Go ahead.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for your candor and just sharing your experience. So my personal question for you is, why not vote independent? So why did we land on the GOP versus voting for an independent candidate and putting your vote behind them, or pushing them and pushing the movement behind an independent candidate that may not fall into those silos of a Democrat or a Republican?
I mean, if there's an independent candidate that comes with policies that are going to resonate with us, then I don't have an issue with that either. I think we have to take for example, I'm a passionate person, but I'm not an emotional one, right? So you can't come to me, you know, a thinking person who's going to use common sense and try to bait me into an emotional conversation to get my vote. I need you to come with tangible, what are you going to do for me, right? How are you going to improve the situation I'm looking at right now, which is our communities are trash, our schools suck, right? And we're not thriving as a community. And the sad part about it is these communities are led by the people that keep begging for our votes, and we keep giving it to them. So the question was, why not support an independent? Well, if there's an independent that comes with a policy platform that resonates with us, then maybe we would do that. But at the same time, independents typically don't get enough of the vote for them to be taken serious or maybe even considered viable candidates. I'm not against that, but I'm also not going to allow someone to demonize me or make me feel some sort of kind of way because I'm choosing to vote GOP just because they have some stereotypical issues or some idiosyncrasies about the fact that it's just red. Like, let's be adults and look at the party platform. Let's look at the policies and then examine our own worldviews and say, wherever it lands, I don't have to like these people. I just need them to do their job.
So your relationship,
get out of my way.
So your relationship, you would consider it to be transactional.
I was just going to say, yeah, very transactional. So,
and that's good because many people would argue that the black vote needs to be more transactional. I want to go back to something.
It should. Yeah, it should.
Agreed. Something you opened with, and you basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm hoping I'm doing it accurately. You were basically saying that you could not be Christian and Democrat. right? And I would like for you to articulate
for me.
For you, and I'd like for you to.
Right.
And the reason I want to go back on that is not because of you, because I know a lot of black people who are conservative, morally speaking, who are indeed,
right.
Christians, and that they are uncomfortable with certain elements of the Democratic Party. And if you could kind of articulate what some of the things were that you felt were against your worldview, or were against your morals and values.
Right. So when I talked about, identity, right, so many of us in this postmodern world, who we are is wrapped up into our identity, such as ethnicity. But for me, if I'm to be consistent, if I am to truly live out my faith, my identity must be hidden in Christ, meaning it is Christ over everything. So that means I have to emotionally disengage from what's happening in the world so that I can understand what is God's will for my life and how am I to exhibit what it means to be a Christian in this dark, fallen world. What does that mean for me to be the light? That means I can't partner with wickedness or try to say, well, I don't want to compromise my Christian convictions for the sake of political expediency. So if that means that the main things that the opposing party is trying to champion, which are things that I know my Savior died for, and it's opposing to the entire
And I want to know what some of those things
worldview.
are. That's what I'm asking you.
Well, for me, I don't hide it. I am distinctively pro-life, right? I am pro-life from the womb to the tomb, meaning I don't allow age of gestation to tell me that these people get to live, but because these are more smaller and vulnerable, that if they're inconvenient in the place that they happen to be growing in, then they don't get to live, right? And a lot of people would argue, well, Ms. April, it sounds like you're trying to legislate morality. All of us legislate morality. The question is, are we as a human society in this country, are we so morally debased that we can't protect the most vulnerable ones of us, particularly the ones that look like us in the womb, but we'll partner with people who that's all they want to promote? For me, the life issue was the issue.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this then, and then we're going to take a real quick break. Very quickly, because the criticism from people on the left onto people on the right when we hear that is, you're not pro-life, you're pro-birth. Because there are so many things that happen to people after they're born that the GOP is like, then they're notably absent. And so I'd like for you to, and those are the things that I want to, I want you to help us to reconcile, because I'm hearing you espouse things that the GOP says they believe in. And then they put a candidate like Herschel Walker up. And I'm just wondering, like, where's the cognitive dissonance then? Because how do we support a man who is paying for abortions and not taking care of his kids and all these baby mamas, everything that the GOP supposedly hates, black children born out of wedlock and all that, and then they say, no, but this is the best guy. We are having a very informative and riveting conversation with Miss April Chapman. She has given us tons to chew on and a lot of insight as to, why black people in particular, and black people in Georgia in particular, are beginning to have GOP leanings or just being more receptive to the GOP message. And we do have callers holding. You got the phone lines lit up, April. So we got to take some of these calls. But before we get to the calls, and we're going to get to them just as soon as you answer this question, right before the break, again, I was just bringing up the dichotomy between the things that the GOP purports and then the things that they do. And so when I look at someone like Herschel Walker, who was trying to be a one of 100 senators, we cannot alleviate the gravity of the office that he was running for. And before we even get to how visibly unintelligent he was, before we can even get to that, this is a man, again, who has the message, you shouldn't have an abortion, but I can. I'm trying to understand how you're able to reconcile that very blatant hypocrisy, which is not uncommon within the party, by the way.
No, well, there's a conversation that needs to be had about hypocrisy in general, and it needs to be dealt with on both sides. But while I don't purport to be an apologist for Herschel Walker, even as a conservative, I don't believe that he was the best that we could have presented. But here's what I will say about that. Herschel Walker presented himself, I don't know him personally, to be a Christian. And to be a Christian means that you have to come and reconcile many things, being one, that you're a sinner in need of a savior. Now, I don't think he did a very good job of telling his own story, because had that been me, having been on the other side, meaning I am a woman who actually had an abortion, right? Mm-hmm. But now I'm born again, meaning that I can recognize that what I did was sinful, and it was wicked, and it was offensive to a righteous and holy God. So being a Christian means you can't just say I'm a Christian in word and not in deed, meaning you have to accept some accountability for the fact that here is who I used to be. Here is what I did. It was wrong. It was heinous. It was offensive. But this is who I am today. I can no longer advocate to say, well, I did it, so I can't say. No, I can stand as a testament this side of salvation to say, don't go down this path. Just because it's something that I did, it was wrong, and you shouldn't go and do likewise. What I can't support. It's one thing to say, oh, in my past, I've done X. It is different to say, well, in my present capacity, as a pastor who is supposed to be a conduit and preacher of the gospel, to fit your mouth to advocate for the slaughtering of babies in the womb, to me, that's hypocrisy too. At least I can say I have overcome by the blood of the testimony of the Savior who died for me and purchased me with his blood. I'm no longer that person. So since I'm no longer that person, I'm not going to advocate for the wicked things that I did in my past. That is the whole story of redemption and the doctrines of grace. Now, either, that message, that glorious grace is going to be received, or people are going to suppress that truth in their unrighteousness and not give the man a chance anyway and be like, well, once a murderer, always a murderer. Well, that might be true, but my Bible tells me otherwise. But I can get your issue with Herschel. I get it.
Yeah, but again, because he's not the only example. You mentioned before we went to break the platform. I think that was the specific word you used, and that triggered me because I can remember back in 2020 at the Republican convention, the party not even being bothered to develop a platform because the platform was a person. And again, when I hear, every time I have a conversation with black conservatives, I get frustrated, not at the person I'm speaking with, because you guys are so much better than the party. They don't listen to you, though. When we look at the support of Trump, they made a golden Trump. That's like literally a golden calf. We all know the story. So, how much idolatry can there be that, no, we don't need, it is a personality of cult, a cult of personality, excuse me. And so I'm just tripping, honestly, because I don't see these Christian values. If anything, it's beyond that. It's the opposite of that. They worship this man. He is the party. And I don't understand how, and I just don't understand when you talk about your values, how they reconcile that. We're going to continue. Can you stick with us a little while longer?
Sure.
Okay. Hello there, Miss Algie.
Hello. How are you?
I am fantastic, and I'm a little bit better now that I'm speaking to you.
Oh, my goodness. You and me both. I am so glad to hear your voice.
Thank you so much.
We had some prayers going out for you, brother, and just thanks be to God. I'm just wanting to say that.
Thanks be to God, and I promise you I felt every one.
Well, Atiba, it's not surprising that you have such an interesting conversation going on here, and I have a question. I have a few, but I'm going to limit myself because I know you have other callers. I'm curious to know.
You have a question for our guest?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'm curious to know what you see as a platform that conservatives/Republicans could offer for children that are already born? I mean, you've talked quite a bit about those that are still in the womb, but what about the children that are out here living now, currently, and those yet to be born, who need programs that will support them in helping them to develop, helping them to have good quality education, housing, etc. All of these things that we need to raise our children. Could you speak a little bit about that in terms of, because I heard you talk about, from a business perspective. I've been a former business owner as well. So I heard you talk about it from a Christian perspective. I'm a Christian. But I need to hear from your perspective, not the us, because you said that quite a bit at the beginning. I want to hear from your perspective what the Republican conservative platform could be to support our children.
Thank you for that question.
Right, I think it's an amazing question. But for me, I think it presupposes the idea that we actually need government to thrive and flourish. And I think that's part of the problem. We're constantly looking to government to solve all of our ills and our issues versus I'm a big proponent of accountability. At what point do we encourage people to be accountable for their choices and then the consequences that result from those choices? So here we are, right? We do in this country, we have a broken foster care system. So, my answer to that is to fix a broken, foster care system. The answer isn't to just kill more babies so that we don't keep feeding, more children into the broken foster care system. We actually attempt to fix the foster care system. The issue is, the truth in this country is that it costs way too much to adopt a child, but it doesn't cost one much to kill one, right? I'm involved with several organizations who actively support mothers who choose life, to choose to keep their babies, right? We are providing them with support, not government support, meaning we rally alongside that woman. We get with her. We find out, who do you have in your life? Okay, so you don't have this. What do you need? What are your immediate intrinsic needs are? Do you need to work? Okay, who do we know that is doing job training in this area or that area? It's more about community and family than it is about the government. And I find that in our community, if we took our eyes off the government and stopped looking for them to solve the issues, but rather we accept responsibility for how we got here, right? We have some major cultural shifts in how we train and teach our children so that they understand that the nuclear family gives you better outcomes than you just being somebody's baby mama, right? Because we know that single motherhood comes with challenges that none of us, we knew how bad it would be, but we just didn't realize how bad it ended up being. So that the party, I don't believe it's any party's responsibility to be the savior of all. Rather, we need to put more emphasis on personal responsibility and accountability and teach people the values that prevent them from ending up down that road. And we don't promote policies that are going to contribute more to the demise of our own people. Right? We train our young women to be respectful, right? We teach them that their bodies are not objects to be used and consumed, right? But rather they are to be treasured and protected. You can't do that when the most prominent rapper of the day is sitting down with the soon-to-be vice president, and she is upheld as someone that we should be looking to for answers. That's problematic. I don't want my girl seeing that.
I think one of the most prominent rappers in this day and age would be considered now called Ye.
I'm talking about the female rapper Cardi B.
Right. Okay. Well, great point. What we need to do is this: we don't need to take a break. We need to take some of these calls. Marvin's been holding. Lee has been holding. So let's get these people on. Marvin, thank you for holding.
Hello,
what's your question?
Atiba?
Atiba.
Yes, I would like to respond to your first caller as well. First of all, the hypocrisy of the GOP. I mean, when you make tax breaks for the wealthy and the corporations, that really busts the U.S. Treasury. So we have to make up the difference in the loopholes they allow them to have. And, they're already billionaires and, they don't pay any taxes. So if we are in a situation we don't make enough money to keep up with the cost of living, like in Texas, so that's why you have the childhood poverty so high. And you create the government programs in the first place, affordable housing, food assistance, child tax credits, and so on. So if GOP saying they want a smaller government, meaning that they want to cut services to allow poverty to grow even more, and she's talking about community, the government has a responsibility because it created many other problems in the first place, and they don't hold them accountable to pay a livable wage. And they want to take away the services for like women health care and all of that. So you're going to have more kids in more poverty. It's like Texas has the highest in the nation, and you want to bring more kids to be in more poverty and no accountability. And we don't want to even talk about the violence.
What's the question, though? But what's the question?
I don't know if he has one. I think he's just making a comment. Did you have a question for Marvin, or just making a comment?
Well, yeah. I'm saying, why don't they hold our government accountable instead of giving more tax breaks, in which that is causing us to pay more and no accountability on their part? They don't need tax breaks, ExxonMobil, Elon Musk. Why don't they cut that? And that way we will have a surplus and we won't be in debt. When they complain about the deficit, that's why it's so high.
He raises a good point in so much as when we look at the Paul Ryan tax cuts from 2017, in the aftermath of that, we saw record explosions in both the debt and the deficit. And so, again, I understand. I certainly can understand the spirit of the question. Did you want to respond?
I mean, he made a lot of claims, and I don't believe we have enough time to kind of go through all of them. But
sure.
I guess I'm trying to understand is the assertion that corporations don't pay any taxes at all, and that the bulk of the tax burden is on the middle and lower class. Is that the question?
Yes,
he's
pretty much saying that the lower class is taxed at a higher rate than those who are in the upper 1%, of society. So that's pretty much what he was saying, is that, those who make a certain amount is not taxed the same way as those who may be middle to lower class.
Yeah, I guess you probably should stop voting for politicians that always want to raise. You can't tax your way to prosperity.
Well, here's the thing: the GOP,
you can't cut your way to it either,
right? But the GOP also taxes. They don't tax those who have a certain income. So during the time that, let's say, Trump was in office, a lot of people who were in the middle class did not see as much money as they see now. And I mean, that's just the truth. You have to be in a certain tax bracket.
Well, we just saw the president's tax returns, and we know he didn't pay taxes while he was in the presidency.
And just to shed light on that, African Americans make the lowest amount of money. We average the lowest amount of income. So when we talk about, and April, this is to you, when you talk about, because you're very transactional, and that's okay, because I'm okay with that. But you talk about how it's mostly about financial for you, but most black people are not in your same financial position. So you have to think about that.
Actually, it's not. The financial part was third. The first thing I said was it was my children. It was how they were being educated.
Okay.
There were three things that caused me to jump ship. It was becoming a mom, right? Becoming a Christian, and then becoming a small business owner.
Right.
Even before I was a small business owner, money is we can't. None of us can function without currency, right? You need money in order to survive.
April, I'm sorry. I'm going to need you to hold that thought. We rushed up on that break. Just hold that thought. We are back on Afternoons with Egoin and Buchanan. We are speaking with podcast host, conservative, Miss April Chapman. Right before we went to break, you were in the midst of replying. As I promised, I want you to be able to finish your thought, Miss Chapman.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for having me back. So I just wanted to respond to the caller.
Sure.
Like I said, he was making some assertions about how our current tax system works. And I would agree that our current U.S. tax code could benefit from some reform. But the fact that, all Americans pay taxes, when you look at the composition of the types of taxes that are paid, it varies based on income distribution. And the more money you make, you are paying a larger share of your income in individual income tax, corporate tax, estate tax, than do lower income groups. So he's telling part of the story, and I don't believe that he's completely informed into how that works. Our U.S. tax system, yes, with all of its problems, but major expenditures and when you're on whether it's capital gains tax, and the idea that rich people are not paying enough taxes and poor people don't need to, I don't think that's the right conversation to have. The question is, with the tax money that's being collected, how is that money being used? I think we can do both.
I think we can do both.
But I don't think the major burden on most everyday Americans is that we are saddled in tax and that the rich are not. That is just simply not true.
Well, no, I'll tell you how it is true. Because your party, since Ronald Reagan, has told us that prosperity will trickle down. That if we just give these breaks to these rich people, if we give the breaks to these creators and the innovators, that their success by proxy will become our success. And we've been waiting on this trickle down to happen for 40 years, and it hasn't happened. So, yes, it does impact people. Just depends on your perspective. We have more calls we need to take. We've got Lee. Oh, thank you for holding, Lee. And we're going to rip through these calls right now. What's your question or comment?
Okay, so that means that I'm going to try to be brief. But first of all, bless you that you're back.
Thank you.
I'm happy that you're still with us. Happy New Year. And to your guest, I'm 100% in her corner.
Sure.
100%. And I'm amazed that in Chicago, of all places, that we even can have this conversation, because in this city, in this state, black people literally are worse off than they've ever been under Democratic leadership. And this is what always makes me stop and pause and ask, what are you waiting for? And I think to what your guest is saying, to be a Democrat means you must hitch your wagon to things that you don't agree with to get what you want. So if you don't agree with gay marriage, well, hitch your wagon, because that's the way we're going. If you don't agree with abortion, you got to hit your wagon up, because that's where we're going. And then they lump a lot of other groups with us moving forward. And we're saying, wait a minute, what about our problems? What about our issues? We've been in the country. We've worked for free. We've done all of this. Why must we get lumped with other groups who have not suffered as much as us just to get what we are rightfully owed? And so when I think about taxes, speaking of Trump, which my brother got extremely upset about, I don't look at Trump as the problem. If you don't like what Trump done with his taxes, then we need to have the government change the tax code. But that's what they haven't done. So anybody, and all of us, I think, who do taxes, if you can save $1 here or $1 there, you're going to do it. I don't blame the rich for what they do. I think that the government has pushed this narrative that it's us against them, while they, behind the scenes, support them by not changing the tax code so that they can close those loopholes.
Thank you so much for the call, Lee. We appreciate your insight. And I knew it would be this way, Ms. Chapman, that we're going to have callers that completely disagree with you and some that completely agree. Let's continue the calls with Rosetta. Rosetta, thank you for holding. What's your question or comment?
Yes, this is Rosita. And,
Rosita.
Yes, and thank you for taking my call. Happy New Year. I'm enjoying the conversation between two very bright people, and I'm really, it feels good to hear you guys debate and with respect for each other. Mm-hmm. Both of you are very intelligent, and you're putting forth some ideas that we all need to hear both sides of the story. I've been voted Democrat almost all of my life, but as I age, I am more conservative. I am completely pro-life. I have some concerns about what's going on in our schools in terms of the indoctrination that the Democratic Party, that they're doing here in Illinois, which scares me when I think about what's going on nationwide. Hopefully it won't spread. But we have a new bill that 10-year-olds can go in any elementary school and get condoms. And at 11, without parental consent, both of these, they can have an abortion without parental consent. And I think this is a subversion of parental rights. It looks as if the government is trying to just subvert the power of parents. And then to have a 10-year-old go into an elementary school, it scares me when I think about a 10-year-old girl having access to condoms without parental consent, because if she's engaged in sexual activity, it's going to be with an older person.
Can I ask you a quick question, Rosita?
Uh-huh.
Does it scare you for a 10-year-old to have a baby by her rapist?
Yeah, but that won't necessarily happen.
It happened last year, and she had to go out of state to get an abortion.
It's not happening in mass.
I'm sorry?
Well, we're talking about one person, but if one person has a baby by a rapist, I get that. That should never happen. But when we tell 10-year-olds all over the city, all over the state, that you have access to this, there's going to be trauma that we are not prepared to deal with in the future in terms of the whole global society, not just one person.
Sure. Well,
that's frightening.
We want to thank you for that call, Rosita. Oh my goodness, we're gonna have to make a decision.
I would just like to quickly respond to that because I hear her heart, because I have 10-year-old girls, and the thought, and I get the question like, well, would you rather a 10-year-old have her rapist as baby? I say we deal with the rapist, right? Because we already have legislation that deals with that sort of crime. The answer to rape is not let's give all 10-year-olds condoms. It's just not. Like, my 10-year-old doesn't even know what a condom is. I am her mother. It is my job. Right, but the issue that parents have is that the government thinks it is God, and it wants to subvert parental authority, right, to where children are no longer looking to the people who gave birth to them to lead, shepherd, and guide them, but rather the government has the answers, and I don't need to listen to the wisdom and guidance from my parents, but rather my teacher, who is just another arm of the government, says that I need this, so it must be good. You don't get the right to indoctrinate my children. And that's the issue, where parents are actually waking up saying, well, wait a minute, this agenda is wicked. Something is wrong here. Why is this okay?
I anticipated that this conversation, I am your host, Atiba Buchannan, by the way. Kimberly Egoin is out. We are speaking with podcast host Miss April Chapman. And again, I really anticipated that this conversation would be riveting, would be controversial, and that it would go longer than we expected. I didn't expect this. We've still got a bank full of calls, Miss Chapman. You have the phone lines lit, and we need to go to Christopher, who's been holding on line 4. Christopher, thank you for calling. What's your question or comment?
Well, Happy New Year. Glad you're back.
Thank you, sir.
Hope everybody's well. I'll say this. I think the GOP, they're good at pointing out issues, but they're not good at solving issues. And I heard the lady on the line, she stated, with her faith and stuff like that. But how do you back someone, as in Donald Trump, who's accused of multiple rape allegations, over 20? Also, it has been proven that he lied about losing the election to raise close to $250 million. And it has been proven by the Supreme Court. They denied his cases. 62 of 63 courts denied it as baseless falsehood. Also, the GOP, the Democrats, have about 50 million more voters than the GOP, and they also pay the Democrats pay a larger tax base. And we always hear, pick yourself up by your bootstrap, but I guess that doesn't apply to the ultra-rich like Elon Musk, who paid 0 federal taxes. Also, Jeff Bezos, and it doesn't add more wages to the people beneath them. And also, even with the last GOP the tax bill they passed, the Office of Budget and Management said they should not pass it because it added more deficit to the GOP in 3 years than Obama did in 8. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Chris, for that. And he speaks to a very, again, the cognitive dissonance. Like, I hear the things that the GOP says, and I can never reconcile it with the things that the GOP does. I'm not going to really ask you to be accountable for Donald Trump. I really haven't mentioned his name much in this conversation, Ms. Chapman. I've tried to leave it out in so much as he, as powerful as he was as a president, he's still just one individual. And my bigger concern is with the GOP as a party, because, again, I promise you, with what I opened with is true. I want the GOP to be a viable alternative for every American, in particular black people. And I still deal with, when I speak with black Republicans like yourself, you guys really believe in the tenets. You guys really believe in conservatism, and they need to listen to more people like you, but the party just seems to not do that. And so, go ahead.
I would agree. I don't, like I said, I am more, I don't need, to feel like I need the government to solve my problems, right? My proper role of government is for them to restrain the evildoers, like just keep law and order and really get the heck out of my way. That's really what it's about, right? For me, I would ask the same question to the Democratic Party. Like, we have droves of cities that have been under Democratic rule, and no one wants to live there. And the people that are living there are just like, I really wish I could leave, but I can't.
Well, let me ask you this.
We've got Democratic leadership. I mean, I'm from the Bronx, right? So, like, I can't be, no one can peg me as like, oh, this is that silver spoon in her mouth girl married to the white guy. Like, I'm not that chick, right? I'm married to a handsome black man. I got 4 black babies. I went to an HBCU. I'm from the hood, single mama. Like, you check the intersectionality box, I got you, right? Mm-hmm. My concern is I watch my city, Atlanta, the city I love, the city that I flock to, because I was like, this is the city of dreams where I can come and plant my flag and flourish. There are 10 cities in the city of Atlanta now. Graffiti everywhere. The crime is so bad. My children always ask me, Mommy, when are we going to go to the city? I'm like the ace of never worry. We're not going down there. I'm not. It's so bad. And they can't blame some boogeyman white people out there or it's the white supremacist system. This is under our leadership. We're not holding our own people accountable. But we keep putting the same people in office expecting different results. And they've already proven that they're not interested in doing anything for us.
I think
so. Since everyone likes to bring up Donald Trump, I didn't have nothing to lose. I didn't have anything to lose. What was I going to lose? Get the same. I was already getting. It wasn't accomplishing much for our family to support Democrats when we didn't feel the Democrats were supporting us at all.
And that point
trafficking in my state
is a fair point.
It's fair. Excuse me, April. I just wanted to say, so when we talk about law and order and we talk about major cities, crime has risen throughout the United States, and that has a lot more to do with mental health issues versus the Democrats not doing their job or defunding the police. No police station or no police place has been defunded at this point.
I would fundamentally disagree. I would have to disagree with that for the simple fact that when you demonize
so give me
police,
the numbers.
No one wants to sign up to be a police officer when the culture surrounding policing is they're bad, they're
It's
racist,
not they're bad. We're asking for accountability. That's the thing. Police have gone a very long time without any accountability or oversight. So when people ask for accountability, people don't want to do it because they're used to not having to have that done. That's the problem. And when we talk about these cities that people are afraid to go to, it has nothing to do with a Democratic mayor because she's not going to go out there and fight crime. She or he are sitting behind their desk. Here's the thing. Policies are made, and they have come from years of policies that have to be made, remade, and redone. You know that. And here in Chicago, under GOP, or we've had a governor who was a Republican, nothing has changed. It's been the same. Crime has always been an issue here. Crime has always been an issue in other states. It has nothing to do with the political party. It has more to do with systemic issues that need to be addressed. And it doesn't have to necessarily deal with racism, but it's systemic issues that need to be addressed that's bigger than government.
Before you respond, we have to
what are the systemic issues that need to be addressed?
One, the mental health facilities that were closed. Let's talk about that. Plenty of mental health facilities are closed. That was a big issue.
And also,
I would agree with that.
Also, divestment in targeted divestment in certain communities that continue to be underinvested in, especially here in Chicago. We are the poster child for that. But we got more calls to take. We got Joseph that's been holding for a long time. Thank you, Joseph. What's your question or comment? Are you with us, Joseph?
I think we lost you.
No, I think we're just gonna see if we can hold. Joseph, no? All right. Sorry. We're going to go to Karen. She's been holding for a while. Thank you, Karen. What's your question or comment?
Well, thank you. First of all, I agree 100% with April.
Okay.
It's not about a party. It's about a people. And it seems as though we rely too much on Democrat, Republican to do what we've been doing forever. And when you say mental health, you're talking to a woman that was a president over the Non-Emergency Medical Association, and the Democrats, your Democrats, closed that up. You know, there's so much that we don't know. And like I said, I'm not for throwing stones at the Democrats, Trump, Biden, none of that. It's almost like we depend on government, just as April is saying, what we should be doing. And another thing we do wrong, we don't understand that America is a business. So all these tax breaks that we claim the rich are getting, we can get that too. The only problem is we follow people instead of learning on our own, instead of doing for our own, instead of standing up. If you could sit back, you could listen to the conversations that come across this airways every single day. Every single day, it's a debate about Democrat, Republican, Biden, Trump. Instead of, hey, y'all, what we gonna do? What happened to us being a community? I'm trying to figure out what happened. Everything is a fight between people that are wealthy and people that know America is a business. April, everything you saying is 100%. Keep doing what you're doing. We got to get out of this, you all, because it's getting us nowhere. But when you want to check out mental health, go check out your Democrats. Matter of fact, go ask your boy Obama. Let you have a good day.
Thank you for your call, Karen, and your insight. We got to keep going. Eddie, thank you for calling. What's your question or comment?
Hey, Atiba, first and foremost, God bless you. I'm so happy that you are in health and in great spirits, my brother.
Thank you, good sir.
All right. I got to be honest with you. I agree with everything April's saying, but I'm just going to be honest. And I challenge anybody to challenge me on this because I'm going over what has transpired. Both parties are full of it. Democrats and Republicans. They're influenced by the rich, and their goal is to win by any means necessary. So depending on which brand you believe in, they have rhetoric for you to buy. But neither one of them truly give a damn about poor people or the working class. It's all about the wealthy. But what that doesn't bother me because, once again, like Karen said, it's a business. So there's really no emotion tied to it, but they sell emotion to get us to vote one way or the other and to create this sick allegiance that black people have to the Democratic Party, even though, especially in Chicago, when we have nothing to show for our allegiance to this party. But to me, it's just absolutely insane that we continue doing the same thing over and over again, and we have attributed godlike and goodness to the Democrats and that the Republicans are the devil. Donald Trump, it's like we villainize Donald Trump, but all of a sudden black people have no problem with the fact that Joe Biden is the reason why so many of us are disproportionately incarcerated. He architected the no-crime bill. He's done more damage to black people on paper.
That crime bill was also backed by the Black Caucus.
Yeah.
So let's not just put it on Biden. Everybody was at fault for that crime bill because it was backed by everybody. So I hate when we talk about the crime bill because the crime bill did a lot of bad, also did a lot of good when it came to domestic violence. But the crime bill was backed by the Black Caucus and a whole bunch of other people.
Funny because you would think, again, with where crime is now, we're 2 seconds off having another one approved. But Ms. Chapman, we're going to thank you so much for your participation today.
My beloved Spelman sister.
You've had some amazing callers. You've had some amazing callers. The ones that agree, or even the ones that disagree. I think it was just an amazing idea for you guys to have such a show. Because there are many people who are just regular Joe normie black people that do think like me, but we don't feel like we actually have a voice.
Yeah.
And we're constantly being shouted down to where it's all, people are afraid to say, well, I kind of agree.
Yeah.
And you should never feel like you have to diminish how you feel and what you believe because the collective is going to gang up on you. So thank you guys for inviting me.
Keep doing what you're doing, April. Keep doing what you're doing.
You're very welcome, and I'm sure we'll continue this conversation in the future. You are always welcome back.
Absolutely. You guys have a great evening.
Thank you.